I'm Catherine Miller, 39, standing proud at my daughter Emma's college graduation. For 20 years, Robert and I built what everyone called the perfect marriage. That morning, I noticed his strange behavior, checking his phone constantly, avoiding eye contact. I had no idea that in a few hours, our family's happiest day would become the stage for our most public humiliation. Before I tell you how my husband's announcement shattered our family's happiest day, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit subscribe, and join me as I share how one envelope changed everything. Robert and I met during our sophomore year of college. He was studying business with dreams of corporate success, while I pursued journalism with passion. We married young at 22, full of idealistic visions about building a life together. Robert was charming and ambitious, qualities that initially attracted me to him. I loved his drive and believed we would conquer the world together, each supporting the other's dreams. When Emma came along 2 years later, we were overjoyed but unprepared for how parenthood would reshape our priorities. Robert's career was taking off, with a promising position at a financial consulting firm. My journalism career had just begun at a local newspaper where I specialized in investigative reporting. I loved uncovering truths and giving voice to untold stories. One of us needs to be available for Emma, Robert suggested when our daughter was 3. My salary can support us all, and your job requires unpredictable hours. It made practical sense at the time. I agreed to step back, believing it would be temporary. I would freelance occasionally and return full-time once Emma started school. But temporary became permanent as Robert's career ascended rapidly. He became a partner at his firm by 30, and our financial comfort grew alongside his success. I poured myself into raising Emma and creating the perfect home. I volunteered at her school, organized community events, and maintained our social calendar. From the outside, we were enviable: the successful businessman, the devoted wife and mother, the academically gifted daughter. Our Christmas cards showed a smiling, perfectly coordinated family against professionally photographed backdrops. Emma inherited her father's analytical mind and my determination. She excelled academically, becoming valedictorian of her high school and earning a full scholarship to study economics at her father's alma mater. Robert beamed with pride whenever he introduced her as my daughter, the future CEO. I knew he saw her as his legacy, the extension of his success story. Robert's parents, Margaret and William, treated me like the daughter they never had. Margaret often said, "Catherine, you're the backbone of this family. Robert would be lost without you." William would nod in agreement, squeezing my shoulder with affection. They lived 3 hours away but visited regularly, especially for Emma's achievements. The first signs of change in Robert appeared subtle, easily dismissed. About a year before Emma's graduation, he began working later, returning home after I'd gone to bed. His weekend business trips increased in frequency. He password protected his phone, something he'd never done before. When I asked about these changes, he attributed them to a major client acquisition and increased security protocols at work. "Don't worry so much, Kate," he said, using the nickname he'd given me years ago. This deal could mean a promotion to regional director. A few months of craziness is worth it. I believed him because I wanted to. Our life together was comfortable, predictable. I had invested 20 years in our marriage, in supporting his success. Questioning him felt like questioning the foundation of the life we'd built. Emma noticed her father's absences too. "Dad missed my economics debate again," she mentioned one evening. "He promised he'd be there." "He's working hard for us," I defended, though doubt had begun to gnaw at me. 3 months before graduation, I found a receipt in Robert's jacket pocket from a restaurant in Chicago, a city his company had no clients in. The date corresponded to a Phoenix business trip he'd told me about. I tucked the receipt away and said nothing, but my journalist's instinct for inconsistencies awakened. Still, graduation loomed, and Emma's excitement overshadowed my concerns. She had earned Latin honors and a position in a prestigious graduate program. This was her moment, and family drama had no place in it. I threw myself into planning the perfect graduation celebration, ordering custom decorations, arranging a dinner reservation at Emma's favorite restaurant, and coordinating with relatives who would attend. The night before graduation, Emma and I stayed up late, looking through old photo albums. "I can't believe this chapter is ending," she said, pointing to a picture of her first day of kindergarten. "But I'm so excited for what's next." "We're so proud of you," I told her, meaning it completely. Whatever was happening with Robert and me, our daughter's achievement deserved unclouded celebration. That morning, Robert emerged from the shower looking distracted. He spent an unusual amount of time selecting his tie, eventually choosing a bold blue one I'd never seen before. "New tie?" I asked casually. "Got it last week," he replied without elaboration, avoiding my eyes in the mirror. As we prepared to leave for the ceremony, I noticed him slip an envelope into his jacket pocket. Something about his movements, furtive and deliberate, sent a chill through me. But Emma appeared in her cap and gown, radiant with achievement, and I pushed my discomfort aside. "Family picture," she insisted, positioning us on either side of her. Robert's arm felt stiff around my waist as we posed, his smile not reaching his eyes. The photo would later become evidence of the last moment we pretended to be the perfect family. Riverside University sprawled across acres of manicured lawns and stately brick buildings. Spring had transformed the campus into a postcard vision of academic achievement, with flowering trees and colorful banners congratulating the graduating class. Families streamed toward the main quadrangle where rows of white chairs awaited beneath a cloudless blue sky. As we approached the seating area, Robert suddenly stopped. "I see some colleagues from the Chicago office," he said, scanning the crowd. "I should say hello. You go find seats for us." Before I could respond, he disappeared into the crowd. Emma had already gone to join her fellow graduates, leaving me alone with our graduation programs and my mounting unease. I found excellent seats near the front, saving one beside me for Robert. I texted him our location, then watched as families greeted each other with excitement and parents adjusted their cameras. 30 minutes passed with no sign of him. The ceremony would begin soon. "Catherine, wonderful to see you," called Margaret, Robert's mother, as she and William made their way to me. They embraced me warmly, their pride evident. "Where's our son hiding?" "He ran into some colleagues," I explained, showing more patience than I felt. "He should be here any minute." William checked his watch with a frown. "The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. This is not the time for networking." Just as the processional music began, Robert slipped into our row, but not beside me. He chose a seat at the far end, separated from us by several strangers. Even more disturbing was the woman who sat beside him, an elegant blonde in a red dress, who leaned too close as they whispered together. Margaret noticed my gaze. "Who is that with Robert?" "I don't know," I admitted, my stomach tightening. "Perhaps a colleague's wife." The graduates marched in, and for a while, I forgot everything except watching for Emma. When she appeared, poised and beaming, tears sprang to my eyes. This moment represented so much: her hard work, my support, our family's values of education and achievement. I glanced toward Robert, wanting to share this pride, but he was absorbed in conversation with the mystery woman. Throughout the ceremony, I sent Robert several texts. "Emma looks beautiful. Did you see her wave to us? They're getting close to her name." All went unanswered. When Emma crossed the stage to receive her diploma, I stood and applauded wildly, as did Robert's parents. Robert and his companion applauded politely but remained seated. After the ceremony, graduates and families mingled on the lawn. Emma found me first, glowing with accomplishment. "Mom, we did it," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. "Where's Dad?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Let's find him for pictures." We located Robert near the university fountain, the blonde woman still at his side. When he saw us approaching, a flash of something like guilt crossed his face before he composed himself. "Emma, congratulations," he said, hugging our daughter stiffly. "You remember Melissa from my Chicago office? She was in town and wanted to attend." Emma looked confused, but nodded politely. "Nice to meet you. I don't think we've met before, though." Melissa smiled too brightly. "Your father talks about you constantly. I feel like I know you already." I extended my hand, professional mask firmly in place. "Catherine Miller, Robert's wife. I don't believe we've had the pleasure." Melissa's handshake was brief, her eyes sliding away from mine. "Lovely ceremony. Your daughter is clearly very accomplished." William and Margaret joined us, their confusion evident as Robert made awkward introductions. The tension thickened as we posed for family photos, with Melissa hovering nearby, checking her watch repeatedly. "We should head to Angelo's for our reservation," I reminded everyone. "I made it for 1 o'clock." "Yes, let's celebrate properly," Margaret agreed, linking her arm through Emma's. "Family only, of course." Robert cleared his throat. "Actually, I invited Melissa to join us. She's new to the regional team and could use some connections." Before anyone could object, he guided Melissa toward the parking lot, announcing they would meet us at the restaurant. Emma looked at me questioningly, but I maintained my composure. "Your father has always been a dedicated mentor," I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. "Let's not let anything spoil your day." As we walked to our cars, William whispered to me, "Something's not right, Catherine. That woman isn't looking at Robert like an employee looks at her boss." "I know," I replied softly, "but today is about Emma." William squeezed my arm supportively. "We're on your side, no matter what happens." His words strengthened me for what was coming, though neither of us could have predicted exactly how dramatic the lunch would become. Angelo's Italian restaurant had been Emma's favorite since childhood. With its warm lighting, family photographs covering brick walls, and the scent of garlic and basil in the air, it represented comfort and celebration for our family. I had reserved the semi-private back room and arranged for Emma's favorite tiramisu to be served with "Congratulations, graduate" written in chocolate. When we arrived, I was dismayed to find Robert had already rearranged the seating. Traditionally, Emma would sit between Robert and me at the head of the table. Instead, Robert had placed Melissa beside himself at one end, with Emma relegated to sitting between her grandparents. Our longtime friends, the Carsons and the Rylas, were already seated, looking uncomfortable. They had known us for 15 years, attended barbecues in our backyard, and vacationed with us. Their confusion at Melissa's presence was evident in their strained smiles and questioning glances toward me. "Catherine, what's going on?" whispered Susan Riley as I took my seat, deliberately choosing one far from Robert. "I'm not entirely sure," I replied honestly. "But I intend to find out." The waiter brought champagne, and William raised his glass. "To Emma, whose intelligence and determination have earned her every success." We couldn't be prouder. Everyone clinked glasses, though I noticed Robert barely sipped his. He seemed distracted, frequently checking his watch and whispering to Melissa, whose red dress stood out like a warning signal among the more subdued attire of our family gathering. Midway through the main course, Robert suddenly stood, tapping his knife against his glass. The table fell silent, expecting a father's proud toast to his graduating daughter. "I have an announcement to make," Robert began, his voice unnaturally loud. "Today marks not only Emma's graduation, but a significant transition in my own life." Emma beamed, likely assuming her father was about to praise her accomplishment. I felt a cold dread spread through me as I noticed Robert's hand rest briefly on Melissa's shoulder. "As we celebrate new beginnings," he continued, "I've decided it's time to be honest about my own new chapter. After much consideration, I've decided to start a new life without Catherine." A collective gasp rippled through the table. Emma's smile froze, then crumbled. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth in shock. "Melissa and I have been together for 8 months," Robert announced, as if sharing good news. "We've purchased a home in Chicago, where I'll be heading the new regional office. We leave next week." The silence that followed was absolute. 20 years of marriage, dismissed in a 30-second announcement at our daughter's graduation lunch. Emma's eyes filled with tears, her special day utterly ruined. William's face had turned dangerously red, his fists clenched on the tablecloth. "You've what?" Margaret finally sputtered, looking from Robert to me in disbelief. "Mom, Dad, I know this is a shock," Robert said, "but Melissa makes me happy in ways I haven't been for years. Catherine and I have been drifting apart. This is better for everyone." Susan Riley stood abruptly. "Robert, this is completely inappropriate. Today is about Emma." "Exactly," Robert replied, seemingly oblivious to the devastation he was causing. "Which is why I wanted everyone together to explain this just once. Emma deserves honesty." Emma pushed back from the table, tears streaming down her face. "What I deserved was one day without drama, Dad. One day that was about my achievement, not your midlife crisis." Robert had the audacity to look wounded. "Emma, try to understand. Life is short. We all deserve happiness." I sat perfectly still, watching my husband's performance with a strange detachment. In that moment, the last remnants of love I felt for him evaporated. This man, willing to devastate his daughter on her graduation day, was not the man I had married. "Catherine?" Susan touched my arm gently. "Are you okay?" All eyes turned to me, waiting for the scorned wife's reaction. Would I cry? Scream? Make a scene to match Robert's? Instead, I smiled. "Congratulations on your honesty, Robert," I said, my voice steady and clear. "It must be such a relief to finally speak your truth." Robert blinked, clearly surprised by my calm reaction. He had expected tears, perhaps a scene that would make him the victim of an emotional wife. My composure clearly unsettled him. "You're not upset?" he asked suspiciously. "I didn't say that," I replied, reaching for my purse. "I said I appreciate your honesty. It's something I value greatly." 3 months earlier, I had found more than just the Chicago restaurant receipt. Late one night, unable to sleep due to Robert's absence on another business trip, I had checked our joint investment accounts. Large withdrawals had been made, money moved to accounts I didn't recognize. Around the same time, I discovered a rental car receipt in our garbage can, though Robert had claimed to take his company car to the airport. These inconsistencies awakened the investigative journalist in me, dormant for too many years. I began documenting everything: Robert's absences, phone records showing calls to Chicago, discrepancies in his travel stories. I photographed financial statements and created a detailed timeline. 2 months before graduation, I hired Samuel Jenkins, a private investigator recommended by Susan's brother, a divorce attorney. Samuel was thorough and discreet, providing me with evidence I couldn't gather myself: photos of Robert and Melissa together, documentation of the Chicago property purchase, and most damning, evidence that Robert had been siphoning company funds to finance his new life. "Robert always underestimated you," Samuel had said when delivering his final report. "He thinks you're just a housewife who'll be blindsided." With Samuel's evidence, I consulted Patricia Winters, the most formidable divorce attorney in our state. Patricia had listened to my story with growing indignation. "Men like your husband believe they control the narrative," she'd said. "They think the world operates according to their timeline, their convenience. We're going to show him otherwise." Together, we had prepared extensively, filing paperwork quietly, documenting assets, and building an airtight case. Patricia had also forwarded evidence of financial impropriety to the ethics board at Robert's firm, timing it precisely so the investigation would coincide with his announcement. All of this preparation had led to this moment, as I reached into my purse and withdrew an envelope nearly identical to the one I'd seen Robert slip into his jacket that morning. I have something for you as well, I said, sliding the envelope across the table. Robert took it with a smirk, clearly believing it contained a pathetic plea for reconciliation. Melissa leaned closer, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on his arm. Kate, this isn't necessary, Robert began patronizingly. Open it, I insisted quietly. As Robert tore open the envelope and scanned its contents, his expression transformed from smugness to confusion, then to horror. His face drained of color as he flipped through the documents, his hands beginning to shake visibly. What is this? He whispered, looking up at me with dawning realization. Page 1 is our divorce filing, submitted 6 weeks ago, I explained calmly. You'll notice it cites abandonment and adultery, with substantial evidence attached. Robert frantically shuffled through the papers, his breathing becoming erratic. Pages 2 through 5 detail the funds you've embezzled from Walsh Financial to purchase your love nest in Chicago. Pages 6 through 10 are photographs documenting your affair, with timestamps and locations. Melissa peered at the photos, her own face paling. Robert, you said you were separated, she hissed. The next document, I continued, is a letter from the Ethics Board of Walsh Financial, acknowledging receipt of evidence regarding your financial improprieties. They've launched a formal investigation, effective yesterday. Robert's hand knocked over his water glass, sending liquid streaming across the tablecloth. No one moved to clean it up. You can't do this, he sputtered. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, I countered. The final document is a letter from my attorney outlining the asset division she'll be pursuing, including 60% of our marital property, full ownership of our home, and half of your pension. Given the evidence of your misconduct, the judge is likely to be quite sympathetic. Robert's face contorted with rage and panic. He stood abruptly, the chair clattering behind him. This is blackmail, he shouted, his voice echoing through the restaurant. You vindictive witch. You'll ruin everything. No, Robert, I corrected him. You ruined everything the moment you decided to betray your family. I'm simply ensuring you face the consequences. Robert began tearing at the documents, as if destroying them would erase their reality. You can't prove anything. It's my word against yours. Actually, William interjected, his voice hard with disappointment. It will be your word against Catherine's, the private investigators, the financial auditors, and apparently, the ethics board. Not favorable odds, son. Robert's screams escalated, profanities and threats pouring from him as his carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Melissa stood and grabbed her purse, backing away from the spectacle he had become. This isn't what I signed up for, she said, looking at Robert with new eyes. You told me you were financially secure, that your wife knew and had agreed to a quiet divorce. You said your daughter would understand. Melissa, don't, Robert pleaded, reaching for her arm. They're trying to turn you against me. You did that yourself with your lies, she retorted, turning to me. I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller. I truly didn't know. As Melissa hurried from the restaurant, Robert's screams turned to desperate sobs. The manager appeared, requesting that Robert leave immediately. William and James Carson stood, each taking one of Robert's arms. Don't make this worse, son, William said quietly. Go home, call your lawyer, and prepare for what's coming. As they escorted Robert out, his final words to me were, You've been planning this all along. Who are you? I smiled sadly. I'm the woman who supported your dreams for 20 years, Robert. The woman you underestimated. And now, I'm the woman reclaiming her life. As the door closed behind them, silence fell over our table. Emma reached across and took my hand, tears still streaming down her face, but her eyes held something new, respect. Mom, she whispered, I had no idea. I know, sweetheart, I replied, squeezing her hand. And I'm sorry your graduation day turned out like this. But sometimes, the truth needs its moment too. The remainder of that day passed in a blur of emotions. After Robert's dramatic exit, Our small group sat in shocked silence until Margaret finally spoke. "Catherine, I want you to know that William and I stand with you completely," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "What our son did is unforgivable, both the affair and ambushing you today." William nodded firmly. "Robert stopped being the man we raised somewhere along the way. We won't defend his actions." Their support meant everything, especially for Emma's sake. She needed to know that family bonds transcended Robert's betrayal. Susan and James Riley insisted on paying the bill, and James Carson offered to drive us home, correctly assuming I was too shaken to drive safely. As we left, Angelo himself approached me, having witnessed the scene. "Mrs. Miller, I am so sorry," he said kindly. "Next time, any time, your family eats here for free." At home, reality hit hard. Emma retreated to her childhood bedroom, alternating between tears and anger. I found her staring at family photos, trying to reconcile the father she thought she knew with the man who had humiliated us publicly. "Did you suspect before today?" she asked when I sat beside her. "I had concerns," I admitted. "But I never imagined he would choose your graduation for his announcement." "That's what hurts most," she confessed. "Not that he's leaving or even that he cheated, but that he would ruin today of all days. Like my achievement meant nothing compared to his happiness." I held her as she cried, wishing I could shield her from this pain. Eventually, she fell asleep, emotionally exhausted. I covered her with a blanket and went downstairs to face what came next. My phone displayed 27 missed calls from Robert and numerous text messages ranging from apologetic to threatening. I silenced it and poured a glass of wine, my first moment alone to process everything. Around midnight, headlights swept across our living room as Robert's car pulled into the driveway. I watched through the window as he sat there, engine running, for nearly 20 minutes before finally driving away without attempting to come inside. He had likely realized the locks had been changed that afternoon while we were at graduation, another element of my preparation. The next morning, Emma decided to stay with me rather than return to her apartment near campus. "I want to be here for you, Mom," she insisted, though I suspected she needed the comfort of home as much as I needed her company. Robert's parents came by with breakfast, their support unwavering. "We raised him better than this," William kept saying, shaking his head in disbelief. By mid-afternoon, the first of Robert's frantic messages arrived. Melissa had ended things after learning the full truth about our marriage and his financial situation. His company had indeed suspended him pending investigation. His carefully constructed exit strategy was collapsing around him. "He made his bed," Margaret said firmly when I showed her the messages. "Now he can lie in it alone." News traveled quickly through our social circle. Friends called or stopped by, most expressing support, though a few of Robert's closest friends maintained awkward neutrality. Susan Riley organized a meal train, ensuring we had dinner delivered each night that first week. Her husband James, an IT specialist, helped me secure all my electronic accounts and establish new passwords and privacy settings. 3 days after graduation, Emma received a lengthy email from Robert, attempting to justify his actions and seeking her understanding. She showed it to me, her expression hardened beyond her years. "He says he still wants to be part of my life," she said bitterly. "That this is between you and him, not affecting his love for me. How do you feel about that?" I asked carefully. "Like he thinks I'm stupid," she replied. "He chose to make it my business when he announced it at my graduation. He can't compartmentalize me now." Emma's response to him was brief but powerful. "I need time and space. Your choices have affected me deeply, and I'm not ready to pretend otherwise. Please respect this boundary." I felt immense pride in her maturity, even as I grieved for the relationship that might never recover. That first week, I stayed in our family home with Emma, processing my new reality. By the weekend, I decided I needed breathing room away from the house filled with 20 years of memories. My sister Allison invited us to stay with her in the neighboring town, offering neutral territory to begin healing. Allison had never particularly liked Robert, a sentiment she had diplomatically concealed for years. "I always thought you dimmed your light for him," she confessed as we sat on her patio that first evening. "The Kate I grew up with was fierce, independent." I'm seeing glimpses of her again. The following Tuesday brought the first mediation session with our respective attorneys. I had expected Robert to arrive with guns blazing, ready to dispute everything. Instead, he appeared hollow-eyed and subdued, the consequences of his actions clearly taking their toll. His attorney requested a private moment before proceedings began, pulling my lawyer Patricia aside. When she returned, her expression told me everything. "They want to settle quickly," she whispered. "The company investigation is worse than he expected. They found systematic embezzlement going back 18 months. Criminal charges are possible." The mediation proceeded with Robert agreeing to almost all our terms. His fight evaporated in the face of potential prosecution. As we concluded, he attempted to approach me. "Kate, please," he began, his voice breaking. "I never meant for things to go this far. I was unhappy, but I handled it terribly." "Save it for someone who still cares, Robert," I replied, gathering my belongings. "You've lost the right to my empathy." As I walked out, Patricia squeezed my arm supportively. "You did beautifully," she said. "Many clients crumble when faced with their spouse's distress. You held firm." 20 years of putting him first was enough, I responded. "It's my turn now." The weeks following brought more revelations. Robert's parents, true to their word, maintained relationships with Emma and me while distancing themselves from their son. When Robert called them seeking financial help to cover legal expenses, William refused. "You made choices that violated every value we instilled in you," he told his son. "We won't fund the aftermath of those choices." Their solidarity meant everything to Emma, showing her that moral character mattered more than blood ties. Margaret began calling me regularly, our relationship deepening beyond in-law politeness to genuine friendship. 1 month after graduation, I returned to our family home, ready to reclaim the space. Emma had reluctantly returned to her apartment, needing to prepare for her graduate program orientation. The house felt both familiar and strange, like a garment that no longer quite fit. That evening, alone in what had been our bedroom, I finally allowed myself to cry without restraint. I mourned not for the loss of Robert, but for the 20 years spent supporting a man who had ultimately valued me so little. The tears were cleansing, washing away the last vestiges of the compliant wife I had become. By morning, I felt lighter. I opened every window in the house, letting fresh air sweep through rooms that had held 2 decades of compromise. Then I began the process of reclaiming my space, 1 room at a time. 2 months after Robert's dramatic exit, I sat in the lobby of the Riverside Tribune, nervously straightening my portfolio. After nearly 17 years away from professional journalism, I had decided to reconnect with my former profession. The Tribune had recently expanded its investigative team, and my old mentor Jackson Thornton was now the executive editor. Catherine Miller, Jackson greeted me warmly, looking remarkably unchanged despite the years. "Still have that notebook I gave you when you were a cub reporter?" I pulled out the worn leather journal, its pages filled with my earliest investigations. "Never leave home without it." Jackson's smile widened. "That's why I always believed in you." Once a journalist, always a journalist. The interview was more like a reunion, reminiscing about stories we'd covered together while discussing how the field had evolved. When Jackson offered me a position as a special investigative correspondent with flexible hours, I accepted immediately. "Fair warning," he said as we concluded, "your first assignment might hit close to home. We're looking into financial improprieties at several regional firms, including your ex-husband's." "I can handle it," I assured him. "Actually, I think I'm uniquely qualified." Returning to work required numerous adjustments. I converted our formal dining room, rarely used during my marriage, into a home office. Technology had advanced considerably since my reporting days, and I spent evenings learning digital research techniques and modern journalistic platforms. Emma proved unexpectedly helpful, setting up my computer systems and teaching me to navigate social media for research purposes. "Dad always said you were too smart for your own good," she mentioned one evening. "I think he meant you were too smart for his comfort." Her insight struck me profoundly. Perhaps Robert had subtly encouraged my retreat from professional life because my ambition and intelligence threatened him. The thought strengthened my resolve to reclaim my identity fully. My first paycheck as a journalist again felt monumental. I deposited most of it but kept $50 in cash, framing the bill alongside my press credentials in my new office. Every morning, I looked at the symbol of independence before beginning work. The divorce proceedings advanced steadily. Robert, facing potential criminal charges for embezzlement, offered minimal resistance to our settlement terms. His company had placed him on unpaid leave pending the completion of their investigation, leaving him financially vulnerable. The Chicago property he had purchased with Melissa was listed for sale, his dreams of a fresh start evaporating. 3 months into my new job, I decided to redecorate the master bedroom, erasing the last physical space that represented our marriage. I selected colors and furnishings that Robert would have vetoed as too bold, too modern, too unlike the traditional aesthetic he preferred. The transformation felt symbolic, a physical manifestation of my internal changes. When Emma came home for a weekend visit, she wandered through the redecorated house with appreciation. "It finally looks like you, Mom," she observed. "I never realized how much Dad's taste dominated everything." Her comment made me reflect on how thoroughly I had subjugated my preferences to Robert's over the years, not just in decor but in almost every aspect of life. Even our social circle had consisted primarily of his colleagues and their spouses, people chosen for their professional usefulness rather than genuine connection. Determined to build authentic friendships, I joined a book club focused on investigative journalism and true crime, connecting with like-minded individuals who valued intellectual discourse. I also began taking weekend photography classes, reviving a passion I had abandoned shortly after marriage. Through these new activities, I met people who knew me only as Catherine the journalist, the photographer, the book lover, not as Robert Miller's accommodating wife. This fresh perspective proved invaluable in rebuilding my sense of self. The approach of Thanksgiving brought new challenges. It would be our first major holiday as a fractured family. Emma initially suggested skipping celebrations entirely, but I insisted we create new traditions instead. "We can have an unconventional gathering," I proposed. "Just us, your grandparents, and Allison, and anyone else who represents positive support." Emma agreed reluctantly, then surprised me by inviting 3 friends from graduate school to join us. "They've helped me through some rough nights," she explained. "They're practically family now." Our Thanksgiving gathering was smaller than previous years, but infinitely warmer. We abandoned formal dining traditions for a buffet-style meal where everyone contributed a dish. William carved the turkey while wearing a ridiculous apron Emma had bought him, making everyone laugh. Margaret brought photo albums, not of family holidays, but of Emma's childhood achievements, celebrating continuity amid change. As we sat around the living room after dinner, sharing stories and playing board games, I realized we hadn't mentioned Robert once. His absence had created space for genuine joy to return. December brought a significant professional opportunity when Jackson assigned me to lead an investigation into corporate fraud across several financial institutions, including Robert's former employer. The story required deep research into exactly the type of financial manipulation Robert had engaged in. "Are you sure you want this assignment?" Jackson asked when I discovered Robert's name in several key documents. "No one would blame you for recusing yourself." "I'm exactly the right person for this," I insisted. "I understand both the technical aspects and the human motivation behind these betrayals." The investigation consumed me through the holiday season, providing welcome distraction from Christmas memories. Emma divided her time between our home and a ski trip with graduate school friends, establishing her own adult holiday patterns. We exchanged gifts on Christmas Eve morning before she departed, our new tradition unburdened by past expectations. On New Year's Eve, I declined several party invitations, preferring solitude for reflection. Sitting in my redesigned living room with a glass of champagne, I reviewed the past year's seismic changes. The woman who had begun the year as Robert Miller's wife now barely resembled that person. I felt stronger, more authentic, and increasingly comfortable in my reclaimed identity. Just before midnight, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening it revealed Thomas Garrett, a photojournalist I had collaborated with on several stories. We had developed an easy professional rapport that occasionally hinted at potential for more. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," he said, looking uncharacteristically uncertain, "but no one should be alone at midnight on New Year's Eve." I invited him in, surprising myself with how natural it felt to welcome someone new into my transformed space. We talked easily about everything except work, discovering shared interests in jazz music and French cinema. When midnight arrived, he asked permission before kissing my cheek gently. "To new beginnings," he toasted, clinking his glass against mine. "To authentic lives," I added, feeling something long dormant stir within me. After Thomas left, I remained awake, contemplating the possibility of eventually opening my heart again. The prospect no longer seemed impossible, just distant. A future chapter one wasn't quite ready to begin. January brought Emma's return to graduate studies and my first byline on a major investigative piece. Seeing Catherine Miller, special correspondent, in print validated my professional resurrection. The story received significant attention, including an interview request from a national news program. As winter progressed toward spring, Robert finally requested a meeting. After consulting with Patricia, I agreed to meet him at a neutral coffee shop, preparing myself emotionally for whatever manipulation he might attempt. The man who arrived looked diminished, his designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack attire, his confident stride now hesitant. He had aged years in mere months. "Thank you for meeting me," he began awkwardly. "I know you had every right to refuse. What do you want, Robert?" I asked directly, uninterested in small talk. "To apologize," he said, his voice catching. "Not for the end of our marriage, which was clearly broken, but for how I handled it." Emma deserved better. "You deserved better." "Yes, we did," I agreed simply. He nodded, accepting my response without argument. The company investigation concluded. "I've been terminated and have to repay substantial funds, but they're not pressing criminal charges if I cooperate fully." "Is that supposed to impress me?" I asked. "That you're merely an embezzler, not a convicted felon?" Robert flinched. "No, I just wanted you to know. And to tell you I'm moving to Seattle next month. A former colleague offered me an entry-level position. I'll be starting over completely." Something about his total defeat stirred an unexpected emotion in me, not sympathy exactly, but recognition of human frailty. "I hope you find whatever you're looking for, Robert." "I had everything worth having and failed to recognize it," he replied quietly. "That's my burden to carry now." As we parted, I felt the final threads connecting us dissolve completely. Robert would always be Emma's father, a fact that created a permanent link between us. But he was no longer integral to my story, merely a character who had exited the main narrative. That evening, I called Emma to inform her about Robert's planned relocation. Her response was measured, evidence of her ongoing therapy work processing the betrayal. "I'm not ready for a relationship with him yet," she said thoughtfully. "But I'm glad he's trying to rebuild his life. Maybe someday we can establish something new." "You have a generous heart," I told her proudly. "I learned that from you, Mom," she replied. "Watching you handle this whole situation with such dignity taught me more than any lecture could." Her words affirmed that despite the pain Robert had caused, our family's core values remained intact, transmitted from one generation to the next. Some legacies transcended betrayal. In April, 1 year after I had first discovered evidence of Robert's affair, I completed a major investigative series on corporate finance manipulation. The 5-part expose received attention from regulatory agencies and earned me a regional journalism award. At the ceremony, surrounded by colleagues who respected me for my work rather than my marital status, I felt my professional identity fully restored. Thomas attended the award dinner as my guest, our relationship having evolved gradually from collegial to something deeper. He understood my need for independence and moved at my pace, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. "I'm proud of you," he said as we celebrated afterward. "Not just for the award, but for rebuilding your life with such courage." I had to rediscover who Catherine Miller really is, I explained. Not Robert's wife or even Emma's mother, but me, independently. "And who is she, this Catherine Miller?" he asked, his eyes warm with genuine interest. I smiled, realizing I finally had an answer that felt completely true. "She's a work in progress, but authentically herself for the first time in decades." As spring blossomed into early summer, Emma called with news that Robert had reached out, asking to meet during his brief visit back to the area. She had agreed, setting clear boundaries about time and expectations. "Are you comfortable with this?" I asked, concerned for her emotional well-being. "I think so," she replied thoughtfully. "I'm curious to see if he's really changed or just saying what he thinks I want to hear." After their meeting, Emma reported that Robert seemed genuinely remorseful and less self-absorbed than before. "He didn't make excuses or try to justify anything," she explained. "He just listened and accepted responsibility." It was strange but encouraging. Her measured reconciliation with her father represented another step in our family's healing. Though Robert had broken our family unit, he couldn't destroy the bonds that remained between those who chose to maintain connection. As the 1-year anniversary of the graduation incident approached, I found myself reflecting on the tremendous distance I had traveled emotionally. The pain had transformed from an acute, stabbing wound to a dull awareness, like an old injury that occasionally ached but no longer debilitated. My home was fully redecorated, my career flourishing, my relationship with Emma stronger than ever. I had begun cautiously exploring romantic possibilities with Thomas, allowing myself to be vulnerable again with appropriate boundaries. The woman who had once measured her worth through her husband's approval now recognized her inherent value. The journey hadn't been easy, but its difficulty made the triumph sweeter. In losing what I thought was essential, I had discovered what truly mattered. Authentic self-expression, meaningful work, genuine connections, and the courage to begin again. 3 years passed, transforming the raw wounds of betrayal into healing scars that occasionally ached but no longer define me. Life had assumed a new rhythm, built around choices that reflected my authentic self rather than accommodating someone else's expectations. My investigative series on corporate fraud had expanded into a nationally recognized exposé, earning a prestigious journalism award and establishing me as a respected voice in financial reporting. The irony wasn't lost on me that Robert's betrayal had ultimately reconnected me with my professional passion. His deception had inadvertently unleashed my dormant talent for uncovering truth. My desk displayed the framed award alongside a photograph of Emma at her graduate school commencement, where I had sat proudly as she received her master's degree in economics. She had thrived despite the family upheaval, perhaps even motivated by it. "Watching you rebuild your life showed me what resilience really means," she once told me. Emma now worked for a nonprofit organization focused on financial literacy for women, helping them achieve independence through education. Her personal experience had shaped her professional mission, transforming pain into purpose. I recognized the pattern, so similar to my own journey. My relationship with Thomas had deepened gradually, respecting the pace my healing required. After 2 years of dating, We had recently decided to move in together, blending our lives while maintaining the individual spaces we both valued. He understood my need for autonomy, never threatened by my success or independence. "You two complement each other perfectly," Emma observed after spending a weekend with us. "He celebrates your strength instead of competing with it." Her insight highlighted exactly what had been missing in my marriage to Robert. Mutual celebration rather than competition, support without resentment. Thomas and I built our relationship on equality, each bringing whole selves to the partnership rather than fractional identities. Robert remained in Seattle, rebuilding his life with apparent sincerity. According to Emma, who maintained limited contact, he had taken a modest position at a small investment firm and seemed genuinely committed to ethical practice. He dated occasionally, but appeared to have abandoned the pursuit of illusory perfection that had driven his affair with Melissa. I hadn't spoken to Robert directly in over 2 years, our communication limited to necessary legal exchanges through attorneys. The divorce had finalized without drama, Robert accepting the terms without protest. The last I'd heard, he lived in a small apartment, a far cry from our spacious suburban home or the luxury Chicago property he'd purchased for his imagined new life. Melissa had completely disappeared from the narrative, returning to anonymity after her brief, destructive appearance in our family story. I sometimes wondered about her, not with anger but curiosity. Had she found what she sought, or did she carry her own regrets about becoming entangled in our family's dissolution? Robert's parents remained surprisingly central in my life, our relationship transcending the broken marriage. Margaret and I spoke weekly, and William still helped with household repairs, refusing to let me waste money on overpriced contractors. They had chosen connection over division, recognizing that family bonds could endure despite their son's betrayal. "You'll always be our daughter," Margaret insisted during a recent visit. Some relationships aren't defined by legal documents. When Emma announced her engagement to Michael, a thoughtful professor she'd met through her work, questions arose about Robert's role in the wedding. After careful consideration, Emma decided to invite her father, but assigned him no official duties in the ceremony. "I want him there because he's part of my history," she explained. "But you're walking me down the aisle, Mom. You earned that honor by being both parents to me when I needed it most." Planning Emma's wedding necessitated increased communication with Robert, testing the boundaries of our carefully maintained distance. To my surprise, he remained respectful and appropriate, focused entirely on Emma's happiness rather than any personal agenda. 2 weeks before the wedding, Robert requested a meeting, suggesting the same neutral coffee shop where we'd last spoken years earlier. After consulting with Thomas, who supported whatever decision I made, I agreed to the meeting, curious about Robert's purpose. The man who arrived looked both familiar and foreign. Physically, he had aged considerably, his hair now significantly gray, his posture less commanding. Yet something in his eyes seemed clearer, more present than during our marriage. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he began, his voice lacking its former authoritative tone. "I wanted to talk before the wedding, to clear the air." "I think the air between us is as clear as it needs to be," I replied carefully. "We've both moved forward." Robert nodded. "Yes, but there's something I need to say, not for reconciliation or forgiveness, just for truth. I've been working with a therapist for years, trying to understand why I destroyed what mattered most. And I prompted when he paused. "I was terrified of your potential," he admitted quietly. "When we met, your talent outshone mine. Your intelligence intimidated me. Instead of celebrating your gifts, I systematically encouraged you to diminish them. Your success now proves what I always feared. You never needed me, but I desperately needed your support to achieve anything." His insight surprised me with its accuracy and self-awareness. "That's remarkably perceptive, Robert." 3 years of intensive therapy, he replied with a sad smile. "Expensive but effective." We sat quietly for a moment, the weight of 20 years settling between us. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness, he finally continued. But I want you to know I recognize the harm I caused. And I'm genuinely happy you've reclaimed your life so successfully. Thank you, I said simply, finding no pleasure in his regret but appreciating the acknowledgement. There's one more thing, he added, reaching into his jacket. Emma mentioned you're writing a book about financial fraud. This might be useful. He handed me a flash drive. It contains internal documents from my time at the firm, showing how the manipulation schemes worked from the inside. I've already provided copies to the regulatory authorities as part of my cooperation agreement, but your perspective could help others recognize similar patterns. I accepted the drive cautiously. Why give this to me? Because you'll use it to help others, he said simply. And because I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. As our meeting concluded, I felt no dramatic reconciliation, no cinematic closure, just a quiet acknowledgement of shared history and separate futures. Walking away, I realized I genuinely wished him well, not from lingering attachment, but from the peace of true indifference. Emma's wedding arrived on a perfect June day, the kind that seems designed for new beginnings. As I helped her prepare, pinning tiny pearls into her hair, I marveled at the confident, compassionate woman she had become. Are you nervous about Dad being here? She asked, meeting my eyes in the mirror. Not anymore, I assured her truthfully. That chapter is completely closed for me. The ceremony unfolded beautifully. Walking Emma down the aisle, I felt only pride and joy, the past's shadows unable to dim the day's brightness. Robert sat quietly with his parents, his expression a mixture of regret and acceptance as he watched the daughter he had hurt so deeply begin her new life. At the reception, Robert approached me briefly, maintaining appropriate distance. You did an amazing job with her, he said, nodding toward Emma dancing with her new husband. She's extraordinary. Yes, she is, I agreed. And she got that way partly by witnessing how to recover from betrayal with dignity. Robert nodded, accepting this truth without defense. Catherine, he said, using my full name respectfully, I truly hope you have the happiness you deserve. I already do, I replied simply. I found it when I stopped looking for it in someone else's approval. As Robert moved away to speak with other guests, Thomas appeared at my side, his hand warm against my back. Everything okay? He asked. Better than okay, I assured him. Just appreciating how completely life can transform when you're forced to rebuild it. Later that evening, as I watched Emma and Michael share their first dance, Margaret joined me, linking her arm through mine. I've been thinking about that terrible day at graduation, she confessed. How we all thought it was the end of something precious. It was, I acknowledged. But endings make space for new beginnings. When Robert opened that envelope and started screaming, I was mortified, she continued. Now I see it was actually the moment you reclaimed your power. Her observation struck me profoundly. That envelope had contained more than legal documents. It held the seeds of my transformation. By preparing for the worst while hoping for the best, I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed. 3 years later, I could honestly say I was grateful for the painful awakening. Without Robert's betrayal, I might never have rediscovered my passion for journalism, developed deep friendships based on authentic connection, or experienced the joy of a relationship founded on mutual respect rather than dependency. The greatest lesson emerged not from the betrayal itself, but from my response to it. By refusing to be defined as a victim, by actively shaping my new narrative rather than passively accepting someone else's version, I had discovered an essential truth. Our greatest power lies not in controlling others, but in authoring our own stories. As the wedding celebration continued around me, I realized my journey had come full circle. From the devastated woman at Emma's graduation to the confident professional and loving partner I'd become, every step, however painful, had led me toward authenticity. Life offers no guarantees against betrayal or loss. People we trust may fail us, dreams may collapse, carefully constructed plans may disintegrate without warning. The only certainty lies in our capacity to begin again, to transform devastation into determination, to author new chapters when old ones end abruptly. Have you ever experienced a moment when what seemed like your worst day actually became the catalyst for positive transformation? I'd love to hear your stories of resilience in the comments below. And if this journey of reclaiming identity after betrayal resonated with you, please subscribe for more authentic conversations about life's unexpected turns. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters come after the most painful ones. Thank you for witnessing my story, and may your own journey, whatever its challenges, lead you toward your most authentic self.